All right, RC number 18. And before we start, again, you are requested to download the app so that you can get access to the free material. And of course, there's the most active group of aspirants in India for IPMAT. And you can make iCoins, you can win 500 rupees and redeem after that. And of course, take a pic for batches for 27-28 and read the passage. Question number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. And finally, the last question, number 6. All right. So slightly heavy reading, but then again, we have done 17 passages already, so it should not make much difference to us. We should be getting the answers right. Just give me a second, please. All right, sorry. Read. All right, chalo. You notice an ant struggling in a puddle. You could ignore it or place a leaf nearby so it can climb out. Choices हैं. Ant है puddle में फंसी हुई है तो ignore कर दो या फिर उसको help कर दो बाहर आने के लिए. This seemingly trivial, not very important, unimportant choice raises profound, deep questions. Are ants sentient? That is, capable of pleasure and pain? If so, do they deserve moral concern? And if they are sentient, which means they feel pleasure and pain, then if so, do they deserve moral concern? अगर उनको दर्द होता है तो क्या हमारा moral concern deserve करते हैं वो इस basis पे? Historically, people have answered such questions differently. Exclusionary traditions, dominant in much of 20th century Western science, granted moral concern mainly to animals closely resembling humans, arguing that strong evidence is needed before attributing sentience. By contrast, तो Western क्या है? वो exclude कर रहा है. By contrast, many Eastern and indigenous traditions adopted a more inclusive outlook, extending moral concern even to insects, believing it is safer to protect uncertain cases than risk neglecting being capable of suffering. So Eastern कह रहा है कि भाई it is better to protect even if it is uncertain rather than risk neglecting being capable of suffering. Both perspectives highlight genuine concerns. Inclusion may misdirect limited resources, while exclusion may ignore vulnerable beings. अब resources limited हैं and you keep adding more people who need them, so that is the issue. While exclusion में क्या दिक्कत है? That it may ignore vulnerable beings. We therefore support a middle ground. What is the middle ground? Probabilistic approach that estimates the likelihood of sentience and moral status, then matches the strength of protection to that likelihood. Similar reasoning already guides public health and environmental policy, where decisions reflect both uncertainty and potential harm. So author कहता है that we therefore support a middle ground, that is probabilistic approach. क्या करती है? That estimates the likelihood of sentience, that is, can somebody feel pleasure and pain, and moral status, then matches the strength of protection to that likelihood. This framework requires distinguishing three questions. The first is scientific. Which beings are sentient? The second is ethical. What characteristics justify moral concern? The third is practical. Which policies are achievable and sustainable? पहला कि भाई being sentient है कि नहीं है. दूसरा characteristics. Second is ethical. What characteristics justify moral concern? And तीसरा whether the action that is required is practicable or not. Okay. These issues are often blurred, yet separating them helps produce more balanced decisions. Okay, they are blurred, matlab it's very difficult to kind of separate them, but still let us try to separate. The first step is estimating the probability of sentience. Scientists increasingly recognize sophisticated behaviors in animals once dismissed as simple organisms. Since we cannot directly access another mind, researchers instead examine behavioral, anatomical, and computational markers associated with conscious experience. Insects, for example, possess nociceptors and display wound tending, stimulus avoidance, and stress responses. Such evidence cannot prove sentience. Acha, this evidence cannot prove sentience, but can justify varying degrees of confidence that should be updated as evidence evolves. The next step is estimating the probability of moral status. Many ethicists regard sentience as the strongest basis for moral concern, although some emphasize agency or relationship instead. So, many regard sentience as the strongest basis for moral concern. Some emphasize agency or relationship instead. Because ethical reflection remains uncertain, assigning different degrees of confidence to competing views allows decisions that remain open to revision without assuming absolute certainty. Author says that because ethical reflection remains uncertain, assigning different degrees of confidence to competing views allows decisions that remain open to revision without assuming absolute certainty. Author कहता है यार, we can actually assign different degrees of confidence to competing views, and जैसे जैसे evidence जाते चला जाएगा, ये degree हम change करते चले जाएंगे. These estimates can then guide action, and then we can decide what action to take. Even if ants have only a modest probability of moral status, rescuing one from a puddle requires almost no effort, making intervention reasonable. More generally, stronger protections may be appropriate for beings with higher probabilities of moral significance, while weaker but meaningful protections may suffice where confidence is lower. So in case of ants, even if confidence is lower, effort is not required. So that is sufficient. Critics argue that such probabilities are subjective and falsely precise. Critics कहते हैं कि यार they are not precise as they are as they seem. Yet all moral frameworks involve uncertainty. A probabilistic approach simply acknowledges this openly, allowing confidence to be expressed through qualitative terms or probability ranges while encouraging proportionate responses instead of absolute judgment. Jitni probability hai utna action aap le lo rather than absolute judgment. The framework has practical implications. Growing industries such as invertebrate farming and increasingly sophisticated AI systems raise questions about being whose moral status remains uncertain. Rather than waiting for complete certainty, governments and institutions can adopt proportionate safeguards that evolve alongside evidence. जो पहले कहा था वो भी कह रही है कि can adopt proportionate safeguards that evolve alongside evidence. जैसे जैसे evidence मिलता जाएगा, हम degree of confidence जो है वो change करते जाएंगे. Whether rescuing a drowning ant or designing future policies, the central principle remains the same. When there is a meaningful possibility that a being matters morally, our action should reflect that possibility in proportion to both the evidence and the costs involved. All right. So it should be the evidence that, okay, we need to save them, and how much do we need to spend also is to be carefully studied. Question number 1. To argue, which of the following most accurately captures the central objective of the passage? A. To argue that expanding scientific research on animal cognition will eventually eliminate ethical disagreements regarding the moral status of non-human beings by providing conclusive evidence about sentience. Now, problem here is will eventually eliminate. Nowhere in the passage is the author arguing that the problem will be eliminated as far as ethical disagreement is concerned. Eliminated, the option is eliminated, by the way. B. To advocate a decision-making framework that responds to uncertainty by assigning graduated moral consideration according to the estimated likelihood that a being possesses morally relevant characteristics rather than relying on absolute acceptance or rejection. I think this is it. They are actually talking about a decision making framework जो कि absolute नहीं है, कह रहा है जैसे से और evidence आएगा हम degrees change करते रह सकते हैं. All right, so I think we can hold this one. C, to demonstrate that traditional exclusionary moral theories have become obsolete. Okay, because recent scientific discoveries concerning insects and artificial intelligence invalidate the assumption that only vertebrates deserve moral concern. पहली बात तो this and plus become obsolete. अभी evidence gather कर रहे हैं. Nothing has been declared as obsolete in the passage. D, to show that governments should immediately introduce comprehensive legal protections for insects and advanced AI systems because the costs of delaying action are likely to outweigh any scientific uncertainty. Any discussion about legal protection as such? And is it the central theme? Discuss hua, but it is not the central idea. Eliminated, we go back to B for Bombay. Next one. Which of the following assumptions is most fundamental to the author's proposed probabilistic framework? A, decisions made under uncertainty become more rational when probabilities are used regardless of whether those probabilities are supported by reliable evidence. Absolutely bogus that decisions made under uncertainty become more rational when probabilities are used regardless of whether those probabilities are supported by reliable evidence. There has to be reliable evidence in the first place. Eliminated. B, scientific investigations into sentience will eventually resolve all ethical disagreements. Again, ऐसा ऑप्शन एक पहले भी आया था, एलिमिनेट कर दिया था हमने, यहां भी कर देते हैं. C, even when certainty about moral status is unavailable, there is no certainty, it is unavailable. Reasonable estimates of likelihood can legitimately influence the degree of protection or concern that should be extended to different beings. I think ये फंडा था कि even if it is uncertain, फिर भी हम कुछ डिग्री पे उसको काम कर सकते हैं. D, moral concern should always be distributed in direct proportion to the amount of empirical evidence available, irrespective of practical constraints. Oh, there are practical constraints. Saving an ant doesn't have any practical constraint. ठीक है, but हाँ, degree of sentience may not be that high, but हम उसको बचा लेते हैं क्योंकि practical constraints नहीं है. तो it is not irrespective. You have to take this also into account. But we can stay with C in this case. Even when certainty about moral status is unavailable, reasonable estimates of likelihood can legitimately influence the degree of protection. ठीक है, कितना likelihood है उसको sentience का, उस हिसाब से हम उसकी protection की degree increase and decrease कर सकते हैं, instead of waiting for an absolute answer. Number 3, suppose future research conclusively establishes that ants possess complex cognitive abilities, but also demonstrates that subjective experience is impossible without a nervous system unlike that of insects. Which of the following best reflects how the author would respond? कुछ नया आया, author कैसे respond करेगा? A, the framework would continue recommending the same level of protection for ants because behavioral complexity alone is sufficient to establish moral status regardless of whether subjective experience exists. Behavioral complexity alone is sufficient. ये तो नहीं बोला है, बहुत सारी और भी चीजें हैं. ठीक है, practicable है कि नहीं है वो भी था. A, gone. B, the framework would reject the findings because behaviors resembling intelligence necessarily imply conscious experience and therefore cannot logically coexist with the absence of sentience. The framework would reject the findings straight away. Why? Because behaviors resembling intelligence necessarily imply conscious experience. ऐसा नहीं है, वहां पे example अलग दिया हुआ है, that it is not necessary that behaviors resembling intelligence necessarily imply conscious experience. All right, eliminated. C, the framework would abandon probabilistic reasoning altogether because conclusive scientific findings eliminate the need to evaluate uncertainty in ethical decision making. Would abandon the probabilistic reasoning all together. Again, this is an absolute option. Let's see the eighth one. Eighth kind of D. The framework would likely reduce the justification for protecting ants on ground of sentience while still allowing लिमिटेड मॉरल कंसिडरेशन, ये देखो हमारा पैसेज कहता है कि ठीक है यार आप इस बेसिस पे उसको हटा सकते हो, बट while still allowing limited moral consideration if alternative ethical foundations such as agency or other relevant characteristics remain plausible. अगर ये फीचर है तो अभी भी हम कहेंगे एंड को बचा लो अगर वो डूब रही हो. So I think we can happily go with D for Delhi in question number 3. Number 4. Which of the following situations is most analogous to the author's proposed framework? Similarity. Okay. A. University refuses to revise its admission policy until complete statistical certainty is available regarding the long-term success of every possible selection criterion. हमारा author कहता है कि uncertainty में भी decision ले लो, don't wait for certainty. तो इससे तो similarity नहीं बैठ रही बेटा, eliminated. B. A city council completely bans a new technology immediately after isolated complaints emerge, reasoning that any possible risk automatically justifies the strongest available intervention. वहां पे बात हुई है डिग्री की. It's not that it has to be absolute. दे भी गया. C. A hospital introduces different monitoring protocols for patients according to the estimated probability that each patient may develop a serious illness, increasing intervention as confidence in the diagnosis grows, while continuing to reassess new evidence. Precisely this is what the passage says कि भाई वेट मत करो, डिफरेंट मॉनिटरिंग प्रोटोकॉल फॉलो करो पेशेंट्स के लिए, और जैसे जैसे उनकी डायग्नोसिस की डिग्री हो वैसा ट्रीटमेंट इंट्रोड्यूस करते चले जाइए. आई थिंक वी कैन होल्ड दिस. डी. अ कंपनी अप्लाइज आइडेंटिकल वर्कप्लेस सेफ्टी रेगुलेशंस across every department because uncertainty makes differentiated policies inherently unfair and difficult to administer. हमारा ऑथर बार बार कह रहा है कि भाई uncertainty में भी आप पॉलिसी बनाएं differentiated. Okay, this is gone. Answer is C for cat. Number 5. Which of the following, if true, would most seriously weaken the author's overall argument? Author क्या कहता है कि even in uncertainty आप डिग्रीज स्टैब्लिश कर लें कम या ज्यादा, और जैसा एविडेंस मिलता रहे वैसा ही डिग्रीज चेंज करते चले जाइए. ऑलराइट. ए. एक्सटेंसिव स्टडीज रिवील दैट एक्सपर्ट्स असाइनिंग प्रोबेबिलिटीज टू सेंटियंस कंसिस्टेंटली रीच डिफरेंट न्यूमेरिकल एस्टिमेट्स ऑल्दो दे ब्रॉडली अग्री अबाउट द अवेलेबल साइंटिफिक एविडेंस. ऑलराइट. बी. केयरफुल एनालिसिस demonstrates that assigning numerical or qualitative probabilities to moral status systematically leads decision makers to implement policies that are consistently less accurate than either strict inclusionary or strict exclusionary approaches. Okay, I think इसको समझते हैं, थोड़ा होल्ड करते हैं, फिर आते हैं वापस. C. Governments frequently encounter political resistance when attempting to introduce regulations concerning emerging technologies and environmental protection. I think हमारा overall argument इस चीज पे है भी नहीं बेटा, तो ये तो immediate elimination है. D. New scientific evidence suggests that several invertebrates species exhibit behavioral markers previously believed to occur only among vertebrates. Okay. अगर ये केस है तो ये वीकेंड तो कहीं से नहीं करेगा, इफ एट ऑल स्ट्रेंथन ही करेगा यार. अगर ऐसा पता चला कि उनको भी सेंटियंस है, दे कैन एक्सपीरियंस प्लेजर एंड पेन. लेट्स गेट बैक टू ए एंड बी. A. Extensive studies reveal that experts assigning probabilities to sentience consistently reach different numerical estimates, although they broadly agree about the available scientific evidence. So if they are agreeing, then author के हिसाब से तो डिग्री हम कर सकते हैं ना उसको. अब B में आते हैं. Careful analysis demonstrates that assigning numerical or qualitative probabilities to moral status systematically leads decision makers to implement policies that are consistently less accurate than either strict inclusionary or exclusion. जो अभी पॉलिसीज है हमारी स्ट्रिक्टली इंक्लूजन वाली या एक्सक्लूजन वाली, उनसे कम ही एक्यूरेट है, उनसे कम ही कंसिस्टेंटली लेस एक्यूरेट है अगर हम ऑथर के हिसाब से चलें. तो अगर वो ऑलरेडी हमें पता है दे आर लेस एक्यूरेट, देन व्हाई वुड वी फॉलो व्हाट द ऑथर इज सेइंग दैट बेस्ड ऑन इवन इन अनसर्टेनिटी डिग्रीज पे आप काम कर लो. ठीक, तो आई थिंक वी कैन हैप्पीली गो विथ बी फॉर बॉम्बे. अगर बी सही है तो ये ऑथर का जो आर्ग्यूमेंट है ये वीकन हो जाएगा. ऑलराइट, क्योंकि ये क्या कहता है कि जो भी डेटा है हमारे पास उस पे अगर हम अनसर्टेनिटी में डिग्रीज पे काम करते हैं तो वो भी उसकी एक्यूरेसी कम है मुकाबले किसके, जो ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्टिंग इंक्लूसिव एंड एक्सक्लूसिव वाली हमारी थ्योरीज है. तो विच मींस एक्यूरेसी हम अचीव कर नहीं पाएंगे, तो काम करने से फायदा क्या है उस पर. ठीक, तो दैट इज एलिमिनेटेड. बी फॉर बॉम्बे इज गॉन. Number 6, which of the following statements can be most reasonably inferred from the passage? बेटा कौन सा हम लोग derive कर सकते हैं? The author believes that uncertainty concerning moral status should generally encourage proportional responses rather than either complete indifference or unconditional protection. Precisely यही है. B, the author maintains that probability estimates concerning sentience would eventually replace. अब again यहाँ पे it is an absolute option. Eventually replace ethical reasoning because scientific evidence provides a more objective basis for policy making. My problem is the author doesn't say that they will eventually replace. C, the author considers practical feasibility to be largely irrelevant. Oh, it is very relevant. And के केस में एग्जांपल दिया ना कि आप उसको बिना एफर्ट के बचा सकते हो, तो बचा लो. Considers practical feasibility to be largely irrelevant. Not at all. And D, the author assumes that future developments in artificial intelligence will almost certainly require legal rights equivalent to those currently enjoyed by humans. बेटा कोई कंपैरिजन है कि AI को जो राइट्स मिलने चाहिए वो they will be equivalent to what humans enjoy? Nope. We can go with A. So this was a slightly difficult one in terms of heavy reading. अभी तक ऐसे पैसेज नहीं आए थे, ठीक है, but I hope बेटा you did well. बताओ इसके नीचे कितने सही हुए कितने गलत हुए. And of course, win some iCoins, make some money, take a pic for the batches, and good luck. See you soon.